Hi everybody, welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. I am your host, Dana Litwin, and this week talking about 'Tis the Season, or Christmas in August. Really, this is the time of year to start planning for fall, winter, end of the year, getting into the new year, program launches, events, anything you need to promote. And specifically today, talking about some of the basics of utilizing an editorial calendar. It's different from a normal calendar. So we'll talk a little bit about the basics of an editorial calendar and really some good things to keep in mind when you are planning things in the summer for very different seasons for program launches 3 to 6 months away. So if you are planning, ideally, your seasonal programs, you should have a timeline and a calendar, and specifically an editorial calendar for 3-month quarterly check-ins or launches. But ideally, you've got something that can stretch out as long as 6 months, or in some cases, depending on the size of the event or the program launch, it could be even up to a year away, so that you can kind of get everything all lined up and pre-production as well done as possible to have an successful program, season, launch, event, whatever you're trying to produce. Now, this ties into, pretty easily connects with what I talked about in Event Management 101, but this is different in the use of an editorial calendar. Now, here's what a calendar is and is not when you're using an editorial calendar. You should know that, yes, the basics of it are a calendar, and there's a lot of tools and templates. I also will put the card here for the Gantt chart that I talked about in program planning, but I'll share some other kinds of specific to promotion of these programs, events, initiatives, launches. That's where the editorial calendar comes in. If you're a leader of volunteers and these words don't make sense to you yet because you are not wearing a hat of marketing or PR promotion, that's okay. But this is a good way, if you're not familiar with editorial calendars and kind of social media and other kinds of promotion tying into program launches and planning for it, this is a great way to become familiar with the topic in these quick Tuesday tips, and then have that conversation with someone in your agency, within your organization, who is in a marketing, PR, external affairs, development department, who probably is already using a software program, an app, or an in-house template that they like to use, possibly even just free old G Drive, G Suite calendars and event planning and spreadsheets. But check in with other departments in your agency that do this promotion work to make sure that you're aligned together. And if you're using the same tools and the same jargon terms and the same technologies, that's going to go a lot smoother in planning what you want to do with volunteer services, tying into these promotions for recruitment, or again, ideally program planning and event launching. So what is an editorial calendar? What it is and what it isn't. So there's 3 basic components to having or using or creating an editorial calendar that works really well. Traditional marketing departments used to gear up around latest initiatives and product launches, but now we're pretty much in a constant cycle. So this is why I'm talking about, you might be planning holidays like Christmas or Hanukkah events as early as August, just to get ahead of it and for everyone to understand their role in the editorial calendar. So similar to a Gantt chart or project management, the calendar includes, of course, very basic timelines and dates of deliverables, who is accountable, who is creating promotional content, who's providing it. Like, say, you might need to provide pictures of volunteers or other people on your team doing these things to help promote it, or you might get licensed stock photos, but ideally the kind of some real life footage from either past events, if it's a recurring seasonal thing, or something that you come up with in a fun creative meeting to promote a new program, a new event, a new launch of a policy or something with your agency involving volunteers. But this is a longer term timeline schedule. Again, ideally it's over several weeks or months. And because it's longer term, and because content marketing involves multiple people, and event production or program planning and launch involves multiple people, this is a really great kind of one-stop shopping for everyone to understand their role and their timing and their deliverables. So understanding what it is and what it isn't. A good editorial calendar is much more than just a calendar with content assigned to dates. Ideally, you have a priority list of what you're promoting and publishing in relation to this event or program launch, or a number of program launches represented on the editorial calendar so people can see the seasonal flow and overlap of different programs and what needs attention when. Assigned content producers and or editors responsible for delivering the content, whether that's within your volunteer services department or again working with marketing, PR, or maybe even an outside co-promotion vendor, contractor, agency. And then you want to include on the editorial calendar the channels or the places that you're promoting it. And we're speaking mainly digitally, but I've also worked with a lot of programs who had great luck with doing flyers at libraries. So don't forget analog promotional materials to, widen the audience to folks who aren't always online or where there might be a digital divide. And the other thing that if you have this capability, and it's usually pretty easy to plug in if you talk to IT and marketing department if you're not familiar with this, but if you can work into metadata like search engine optimization, what kind of website traffic or what kind of recruitment numbers you're getting from major recruitment sites or promotion sites, whether that's Volunteer Match or if you're using Eventbrite, or if you have an in-house CRM, customer relationship management thing like HubSpot or an email marketing program. Use whatever you can for that metadata and tags and keywords and kind of some of those basics of promotion. And ideally you have dates in the editorial calendar for when things are due, when content creation or promotional things or pieces of information need to be done and ready to then be published, and who's in charge of that. The second main part of an editorial calendar is really the organization structure of the calendar. So content headlines, content type, people who have different jobs, the metadata tags, if you're able to include that, the status if something is in progress or complete. That's a really important field to have in your editorial calendar. Any other notes or just interesting things or useful information, like to have a notes column. And then what is the primary call to action or behavior that you're asking for? You're asking for people to use something like Eventbrite to sign up, to come in person, is it a drop-in volunteer event? Is it a party? So what is the call to action, or CTA is another way of abbreviating that. And as separate documents, you might have brainstorming elements like another tab, or ideas, or kind of a creative aspect can be kind of complementary to, but not necessarily included in the editorial calendar. And then the third major piece of an editorial calendar, and using it for kind of seasonal program planning, event planning, is developing a style guide. So at the very least, your logo, the color scheme, so that anyone who's participating, whether those are volunteers helping with this as like a planning committee or a special project, or again, outside vendors, graphic artists, people in-house, there should be an agency style guide, an editorial style guide, maybe specifically for this program or event. I've often worked with agencies where we produce a big fall harvest festival. Family Farm Feast was the name of it, and it had its own logo that tied into the agency logo and the color scheme. So again, work closely with marketing. You don't have to do all of this by yourself. This is about kind of knowing enough about how this promotion editorial calendar works to be a part of it, to help supervise it, to organize volunteers to do this as a special project, to support staff who are doing promotion or marketing. So this is really an information session in these Tuesday tips so that you as a leader of volunteers can get more familiar with these. But when you're developing that style guide, if the agency doesn't have one, that's a fun meeting to have too. And again, these are perfect special projects for volunteers with these skill sets. So if you don't have a dedicated marketing department, or development or other staff and employees seem too busy, absolutely put the call out, and I'm going to bet you that someone in your volunteer talent pool either does this as their day job and they want to take this on, leading a special project, and they're used to doing PR and marketing, or you can specifically recruit for this with colleges, universities, high schools, professional associations, and help get more people to contribute to this. But whether you do it in-house as a volunteer project or otherwise, the big thing is the overall tone and voice of the marketing around seasonal programs and promotion. Who are you and what do you want to convey? And the average or minimum type of content, length of videos, length of promos. Do you need to use Canva or something like that to create little graphic things, or is someone doing that in-house with Photoshop? Just little details like that. And again, with that style guide, a branding guideline. If you don't have a style guide in your organization, you don't have to invent it just for this, but it's nice to have some cohesion when you're visually representing the event in promotion and how people are talking about it. And then my final Tuesday tip on this topic of seasonal program planning and Xmas in August and thinking about stuff like that is also be very mindful of holidays and cultural sensitivities around whether it's fasting days like Yom Kippur that happens in the fall or other holidays. Hanukkah on the Jewish calendar, it's not that big of a deal, but because it's close to a big mainstream Hallmark holiday that Christmas has become, everyone kind of plays along. But just being sensitive that aside from whatever American or North American or Western mainstream holidays or breaks or themes are occurring, to dig a little deeper into the, again, volunteer and community diversity and talent pool that you have for a nice wide representation, and see if you can do these advertisements with the help of volunteers or outside vendors or ethnic media in multiple languages to appeal to multiple cultural backgrounds. If it's a normal program planning that's not tied to a major end of the year, New Year's or other holiday event, then absolutely, you want to widen your audience for these things as much as possible and have typically as wide of an appeal as possible to get the maximum number of community representation for your programs, your volunteer talent pool, your events, public events. So I hope you enjoy these Tuesday tips as much as I love making them. If you're not yet subscribed, please do that and hit the bell to be alerted when I upload new videos. And please hit like and share these videos with all of your friends and fans and colleagues in your area. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time with more. Thanks.